Our second topic is the economy. How did we get in the situation that we're in today? Why is it that people in the government say it's the fault of the banks are greedy, the banks need to be regulated? But if you look at the banking industry, you will see that 75 to 80% of it is controlled by the government, and that anything the bankers did is because the law facilitated it, or the law required it, or the federal government encouraged it. So how did we get in the economic mess that we're in today? What lessons can we learn from the Depression? Why is the government today doing the same thing that the government did for the Great Depression, and will the government of this administration and this Congress do little more than extend the recession? Joining me again is Jake Hornberger, who stays with us. Jake Town stays with us as well. Aaron, now I hope I have this right. Aaron Moyer, president of the Philadelphia Forum, is also with us. And Sam Rohrer, who represents the 128th district in the legislature of the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, joins us. When I asked you, Sam, Mr. Representative, if you were a Republican or a Democrat, you gave me an answer I didn't expect but was happy to hear. You told me you were a constitutional Republican. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that whereas I am a Republican and I hold to those basic core values, I am first and foremost committed to the Constitution, which undergirds and basically is what all of us who are in office take an oath to support and to defend. So I am foremost, my commitment to the Constitution, as I believe all those in office should be, is first and foremost to the Constitution and secondarily to a party.
Do we have a free market left in this country, Jake Hornberger?
It's hard to argue it, Judge. You know, there's a common denominator between the problems of foreign policy and the problems with the economy, and that common denominator is the federal government. So you've got the warfare state over here, you got the welfare state over here, and those on the left don't want to take responsibility for everything that they've done to this country with their socialism, their fascism, their regulations. That's what we've got to continue focusing in on. That's the cause of the problem.
Aaron, and I forgot to give your title, and I really love this, president of the Philadelphia Forum of Freedom and founder of the Student Liberty Front. I love the idea that it's called a front because it connotes willing to get into people's faces, and I'm grateful for your work. The front is well represented in this magnificent room. Are the young people in the front concerned that the borrowing that the government is doing today will bankrupt them and their children and their grandchildren with taxes or ruinous inflation when those bills have to be paid back?
Yeah, it's an absolute disaster. Specifically, Social Security is the biggest issue. All of us definitely think about that. We're not going to have it, but we're paying into it. That's really frustrating. On top of that, we're borrowing all this debt from China and other foreign countries. We're not going to be able to pay that back. Even if we get taxed twice what we're getting taxed right now, we're not going to be able to pay that back ever. So our main concerns are that what's going to happen when we can't pay for the welfare and warfare that you were just talking about, when these foreign countries are not willing to give us loans because we're not paying them back anymore, and our country, or our generation, is going to suffer.
Jake Town, what kind of sense does it make to address a problem caused by too much borrowing and spending with more borrowing and spending?
Absolutely makes no sense, and the stimulus plan that we have going on in our economy right now really hasn't had any effect really whatsoever. The economy that we have, and one thing that we should have mentioned before, is the enabler of all this is the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve, with all its money printing and an extension of credit through the banking system, really needs to be abolished. And what we really need is a sound currency for our country.
Let's see, since the Federal Reserve came into existence in 1913, the value of the dollar has gone down by 95%. And in the 140 years prior to the Federal Reserve, the value of the dollar went up 13%. Isn't that kind of just basic math? Jacob Hornberger, what is it about this secret monstrosity in Washington, D.C. that can have tentacles all over the world that we don't know about?
Well, it's incredible. That's why they're opposing Ron Paul's bill to audit the Fed. It's this paper money scheme that governments throughout history have used. It's a way to finance this out-of-control federal spending for both the welfare and the warfare state. They're inflating the money supply, and that's the way they're secretly and surreptitiously confiscating our wealth.
Representative Rohrer, does the Constitution grant the Congress the power to have the president appoint a pay czar and have this human being decide what shareholders who own corporations can pay the people that they hire to run those corporations?
I have never found the authorization in the Constitution. You probably haven't either.
No.
So therefore, it's a shirking of duties in Washington, just as we are seeing. The shirking of duties have gotten us to where we are. That kind of thing is just it's unbelievable.
How can the government, Aaron, get away with the type of regulation which is nowhere mentioned that in the Constitution? There are key phrases in the Constitution that reinforce the free market, like the state can't interfere with private contracts, like if the government wants your property or your liberty, you have to have due process, meaning it has to sue you, and you have a right to appear before a jury, and the government has to say what you did wrong, that it wants your liberty and property. Instead, we have bureaucrats saying, let's see, the president and CEO of the Bank of America makes too much money, we're going to browbeat him into giving him back. Is that the government young people want?
I'd actually say it's kind of half split and split. I would say no, and I think in the long run, it's not what any of us want. But in the short term, I think a lot of people see that, oh, here's a rich guy, he's making a lot of money, and there's a bunch of people suffering through this crisis. Let's go after him. And on top of that, you mentioned the Constitution. Is there any authority for this? No, there isn't. But the Constitution is only as good as the people make it. We are the ultimate check and balance on the government, and we are not holding anyone accountable. We're letting them get away with this stuff, and it's our job to come back and tell them, no, you can't do this.
What can we do, Jay Kornberger, about the rampant, ridiculous violation of the Constitution? Example, just 2 days ago, Mrs. Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, when asked a simple question like, where in the Constitution is it authorized for the federal government to manage health care, responded by saying to the questioner, are you serious? Meaning either she didn't have a serious answer or she thinks that Congress can regulate any activity, tax anything that moves, steal any property, and confiscate any liberty it wants with no restraint on it.
Well, that's their position, that they can do anything they want under the General Welfare Clause. It's been that position since the New Deal. One of the things that we ought to also mention is the idea that the framers intended precious metals to be the money supply, the money system. The Constitution provides for that. No power to make paper money legal tender. The states were prohibited from making anything but gold and silver legal tender. But these people believe that they have the authority to do whatever they want. And to answer your question, we just need to keep talking about libertarianism and liberty, because that's what's scaring these people to death. They know that this is a movement that people are gravitating toward, and it's a movement designed to limit their power.
A dollar bill. I trust you to give it back to me. What is it worth? What does it stand for? What can I redeem it for?
Well, it's a promissory note. The question is, what is it promising to pay?
What is it promising to pay?
Promising to pay nothing.
If I present it to the Treasury, what will they do besides looking at me like I have 3 heads?
Well, in the old days, you go in and you get your gold coins in exchange for the promissory note. By making this legal tender and getting off the gold standard, they were able to plunder and loot the American people with these kind of irredeemable promissory
and what
notes.
has happened to the value of cash in this country as a result, Aaron, of it not being backed by gold and not being backed by silver and allowing the Federal Reserve to print as many of those things as it wants?
It's turned into nothing. The nickels you have are worth more in metal than they are worth 5 cents. There's absolutely no value to this whatsoever. Most banks around the world have dropped this as the reserve currency.
Representative Rohrer, you took an oath to uphold 2 constitutions, the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Do legislators in Pennsylvania ever lament that the rights of the sovereign Commonwealth in which we are right now are being usurped not by the Congress, not by Mrs. Pelosi, not by George W. Bush, not by President Obama, but by the secret bank about which we know so little, called the Federal Reserve?
Unfortunately, not enough, Judge. Unfortunately, not enough. Most folks, unfortunately, do not believe even that Washington has overstepped its bounds. That is hard to believe, but we are sitting here right now with a 10th Amendment resolution in our General Assembly that I put forth, and we have probably 50 co-sponsors on that to tell the federal government you have overstepped your bounds in many areas as relative to the sovereign capacity of the states. Not enough answer that question.
And I can't resist this topic because I am from the state on the other side of the Delaware. And there are many bridges that cross the Delaware from New Jersey to Pennsylvania. But next to one of those bridges as you're going towards Pennsylvania is a sign that says, "Welcome to Pennsylvania, where America begins." Because on the other side of the Delaware, it's like the People's Republic of New Jersey, right? Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us on this topic.